Hello, I'm Richard Murphy and I want to talk about the budget on Wednesday 3rd March. I'm recording this less than an hour after Rishi Sunak sat down after the budget and less than half an hour after I was commenting on BBC Radio 2 on what he'd had to say. Let me summarise my concerns about the budget that we heard today because I have a lot of them. The first one is that it is assumed throughout the budget that the coronavirus crisis is basically over. It's as if Rishi Sunak thinks that the virus has signed up to Boris Johnson's roadmap, that everything is going to be over by June the 21st, jobs will be back in good order by September as businesses reopen, and from then on the economy can run itself without further assistance. Look, I'd love that to be true. Why wouldn't I? Everyone I know would love to think that the crisis of the last 15 months, which is, we know, going to last for a few more months yet, will come to an end. And if it did, I'd be very happy. But what I also know is that the Health Services Journal has warned this morning that the NHS in London is preparing for the next COVID peak. And I've been told by a hospital consultant there that they're expecting that as soon as July. In other words, things may not run as Rishi Sunak assumes, in which case, literally, this budget is for the fairies because nothing that it forecasts is going to happen, and he's going to be back at the dispatch box well before the summer announcing new emergency measures. So I'd like you to keep that in mind. Everything else that follows is conditional on COVID deciding to play the government's game, and it hasn't signed up to it. Let's talk about what else worries me about the budget. Well, really, the fact that actually what is being said is that there is going to be growth, and significant growth, after the downturn of nearly 10% during the course of the current financial year, the biggest single deficit and downturn that has been sustained in the UK for more than 300 years. The forecast for next year has been downgraded by the Office for Budget Responsibility, who prepare the economic forecasts on which the budget is based. They've now said that next year we'll only see growth of 4%. That's very modest, a small bounce back. Previously, they were talking about much higher numbers. They've now delayed the recovery until the following year, the one that begins in April 2022. At the end of which they say we might be back where in theory we should have been in March 2020. We'll have recovered the lost ground, but none of the growth that would have happened in the meantime. But again, I've looked at the assumptions, and there are two which really worry me. One is that businesses are going to borrow at record levels, not now, because we know they've borrowed vast amounts in the last year just to keep going, using government-backed schemes to cover their losses, but they're going to do record borrowing over the next 2, 3, 4 years to invest. Now, I've heard the story in the budget about a national investment bank which is going to partner businesses to do this. I've heard the story about free ports and how that's going to create lots of investment, although historically, and we've tried these before, it never has. I've heard too the story that companies are going to get significant tax reliefs if they invest over the next 2 years. But remember, many businesses have got losses at present, and those tax reliefs will do nothing for them because you have to have a profit before the tax relief provides you with a benefit. So, do I really think that businesses are going to invest to the scale that the government says? And do I think that there are going to be banks who are going to be willing to lend against balance sheets that have already suffered badly over the last year? And my answer is simply no. I can't see it happening. I can't see the banks cooperating. I can't see that investment happening. And the other reason why is I can't see there being business confidence to support that level of investment. And here I come to my third point. My third point is simply this. The government is assuming that within a year or so, households will have completely forgotten COVID. They'll all be happy, we'll all be ecstatic, and we'll all actually stop saving altogether. There has been record saving over the last year, and that's been because the government has run a record deficit, and savings by households have to, broadly speaking, households and businesses have to, broadly speaking, match deficits by government, so there's been massive amounts saved. the assumption is that households are now going to spend that money out. I don't believe that, and I don't believe it for a number of reasons. First of all, 25% of households are definitely worse off now than they were before COVID. Another 20% of households are no better off, and the next 20% of households have only saved a little. That means most of the savings are amongst those who are already saving or those who are already wealthy. And if there's one thing I can tell you about the wealthy, and I've known a few in my time, it is that they don't spend all their income. I'll let you into a secret. That's why they're wealthy. They don't spend everything they've got. They've got something left over. That's their wealth. And so they will not be spending the way that the government is assuming. In fact, I believe that people will still be trying to save over the coming years. And the reason why is that right now, nearly 3 million people are unemployed. Another 3 million, as we know, have not received support during the COVID crisis. And there are over 6 million people still on furlough. That's around 12 million people out of a workforce of a little over 30 million people in the UK who are still economically very vulnerable indeed, because by no means everybody on furlough is going back to work. So in that case, why will those people who feel they're vulnerable and those who fear they might fall into that category at some time start spending when instead they'll feel like saving, because the risk to them is that they may become unemployed? There is no chance they'll spend, and I've only got to look back to the pattern of behaviour after the 2008 financial crisis, which had much less disruptive effect on people's lives, to see that it took 7 years before people really began to spend again. They're not going to do it this time either. The result is that I don't believe that the government is going to see the growth that it is expecting. I don't believe business is going to be investing as they expect, and therefore I don't expect there to be growth that they're forecasting, and I don't therefore expect the deficit to clear as they are suggesting. And if all those things are true, and I believe they are, that deficit is going to go up, and when instead we're going to need more government intervention in the economy. What sort of intervention? Well, first of all, more quantitative easing. Secondly, a plan as to how to invest in the future and not outsource it to the private sector, which is what the Freeport plan, for example, does. Instead, the government is going to have to deliver a Green New Deal and the jobs we really need on the ground in the UK to give people the confidence for their futures. This is a government that has fired blanks at almost every level. The assumptions are wrong, the forecasts are wrong, and the expectations as to how the future economy is going to shape up are wrong. I'm deeply disappointed. Rishi Sunak had a chance to make a big difference here. He could have used the firepower that the government has got to change the economy. Instead, he's basically bucked the responsibility that was his to take and has passed it to others with a continuing commitment to spend as little as possible on the state sector that he can. There was no mention of new spending for the NHS or for education or, for example, for the justice system, which is creaking at the seams now. And instead, he has simply said, I'll pass some bungs to business with what are effectively very big tax cuts over the next couple of years and the Freeport system, and that way he hopes he'll get something back. I fear he's very wrong, and that's on top of my other concerns about COVID, and I've not even mentioned Brexit. This is a disaster of a budget, and I believe Rishi Sunak will be back at the dispatch box a lot quicker than he expected, which is exactly, by the way, what I said a year ago when commenting on Radio 2, and I was right. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in what I've been saying in this video, please subscribe. There is a button below the viewing screen. If you're interested in what I have to say on Twitter, I'm at Richard J. Murphy on that medium. If you want to look at my blog, that's taxresearch.org.uk, and we have a Facebook page as well, Richard J. Murphy. So one of those things will get you more information on what this video series is about, and I hope I'll see you again soon.